Joe's
Joe,
okay.
yeah.
This is Joe's party.
Okay, cool. Good thing.
I talked to the nature of it, who's concerned.
Okay.
She and I are old friends. I think that's good.
Good, good. So you think
Her
you're
father's a sick, she can go out now, but I've known her 35 years.
Okay.
I don't know if they're letting me here.
Right. I haven't heard anything. So.
This is the third meeting.
I deleted something.
Well, there's only a couple new ones.
Yeah, you can do that.
Yeah, but this is the first one.
There's all, I've got
I know that, because it sounds like it was, you did see it.
I guess that's why you got elected, huh?
I don't know. I didn't see it on this year, but I'm just glad to see it.
You get one, just give them this, 4G,
Yeah.
because that,
It's good enough. But the four on that, I don't think, what was the media, 15 month, correct? Media thing. I went out to Florida, and asked to, West Coast, we went to St. Helena, we went to Marathon and Rain, we went to Grove. I don't know. You want to try to kind of do.
Hey, it's me. Yeah, we got everything worked out. I called the coach and he had to sit.
you travel a lot, you put in the calendar, what days you can be there, calendar tells you the balance. When you walk in, all your stuff's there, and then listen, when you walk out the rebox and put it lost.
It's okay. Huh?
You want the list of implementation tools, that's what it's listed.
You went through all the districts, and we also. Did we also talk about the students understand where those programs fall?
No, I mean, we mentioned.
Get it. Going back. I mean, you can finish what you're doing.
Sure, yeah.
Okay.
Mike, hey, Mike, good to see you again.
slowing down for you?
Yeah, I mean, right now, it's the end of our fiscal year and stuff, so everyone's, that time is crazy.
Changes around again.
Shuffle.
Some of them kind of have a reputation for always being on the opposite side of what we want to talk about.
That's not a good thing, particularly tonight. See if I can find just one.
Since you read that whole thing, did you recognize all those pictures? Some of them look like anything I recognize.
Well, some of them are overlays and stuff that makes it look different than it really is.
No, I mean
Oh,
like, some of them didn't look like they were really
what-
from Milton. but-
Well, no, some of them are actually
No,
from
they're not.
Alpharetta.
Oh, okay, okay.
Yeah, they're not.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. There, it's Highway 9 below.
Well, you know, and it's like, why do we have that picture?
Yeah, I know. But since it was done, it took into the Alpharetta stuff.
Yeah, yeah.
So too.
I was just making sure.
I mean, I just would want to make sure. I like the concept. I think it's a good concept.
Yeah. You ready?
Yeah.
Okay, let's stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Remove the flag. Pledge allegiance to the flag
United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, I'll call this meeting of the Milton Planning Commission to order. It's about 7:07, I think. This is a regular meeting of the City of Milton Planning Commission. I'm George Ragsdale. This is a 7-member commission appointed by the City of Milton Mayor and City Council, created for the purpose of holding public hearings and making recommendations on rezonings, use permits, concurrence, variance applications, comprehensive land use plan, plan map, and other related plans, and amendments to the zoning ordinance. Everyone's here tonight. To my left, Commissioner Fred Edwards, Commissioner Paul Moore, Commissioner Daryl Burchett, Commissioner Chris Doty to my right, Commissioner Mark Fittner, and Commissioner Joe Kramer. Everybody's here. We only have one petition tonight, so it'll be heard first, I think, yes. I want to make sure everybody's acquainted with the rules and procedures for conducting a meeting. The applicant and any speaking in support will be allowed a total of 10 minutes to present their petition. The applicant may choose to save some of their time for rebuttal following the presentation by any opposition. The opposition will also be allowed a total of 10 minutes to present its petition, and if any time remains, the opposition will be allowed to rebut. Since the burden of proof is on the applicant will be allowed to make closing remarks, provided they've saved enough time to do that. Community development staff will keep track of time, and hopefully the clocks will work, and they'll inform you periodically of the remaining time. Each speaker, anyone who wants to speak, needs to fill out a speaker card before speaking and leave it with Robin. When you come forward to speak, please identify yourself by name, address, and organization, if any, before beginning a presentation. When an opponent of a rezoning action is made within the past 2 years preceding the filing of this rezoning application being opposed, any campaign contributions that total $250 or more to any local government official of the City of Milton, it'll be the duty of the opponent to file a disclosure with the government authority of the respective local government at least 5 days prior to the Planning Commission meeting. A violation of the relevant state statute constitutes a misdemeanor. Therefore, if you have contributed $250 or more to a council member and you haven't filed a disclosure prior to tonight's meeting, the city attorney strongly suggests that you have someone else speak for your point of view. Each application has been properly filed with the Department of Community Development. Signs have been posted, the matter's been advertised, and notices have been mailed to the property owners. The Planning Commission's recommendations will be forwarded to the City Council and Mayor for final disposition at a hearing that will be held approximately 3.5 weeks from tonight on the third Monday of the month at 6 o'clock in council chambers. The Community Development Department has reviewed each application in conjunction with various agencies and departments of the city, and their recommendations, findings, and conclusions are here before us tonight in written form, and they've been made available to the public as well. Demonstrations of any sort within the chamber are prohibited, so please refrain from any applause, dialogue, or anything while someone is speaking. Please just show everybody the same respect that you would expect to receive yourself. If you have any materials other than what we already have in our packet that you want to present to the Planning Commission, please do that through Robin. Finally, if your petition is deferred in accordance with the zoning ordinance, you're required to update or obtain a new sign and repost, and there are no exceptions. We'll start the meeting before we get into the formal agenda by asking if there's any public comment. This is the portion of the meeting where anybody who's here can ask questions or comment on anything that is not on the agenda. If you're here to speak on something that's on the agenda, we would ask you to wait until that agenda item is called. So with that in mind, is there any public comment? Seeing nobody coming forward, I need a motion to close public comment.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Carried unanimously. Next is the minutes of our February 28th meeting. Any changes, corrections, modifications to the minutes of that meeting? Hearing none, I need a motion to approve.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
I abstain.
And Joe abstained, correct. So 6-0. Okay. Robin, would you call the first item, please?
The next item is RZ 12-04, BC 12-01, 12990, Georgia Highway 9, out parcel 3 by Webb Road Promenade LLC to rezone from MIX to C1, and concurrent variance to reduce the 20-foot landscape strip to 10 feet along Highway 9 to develop a 3,321 square foot dry cleaner. So, just want to begin, if you want to look up to your monitors. I can go up here. If you want to see.
You're, Robin, you're fine. You're fine.
That's okay. I'm fine. Good practice. So, as you see, we have this .609 piece of property that's within a shopping center that's already zoned MIX, mixed use. And it is already developed with its sidewalks and lighting and landscape strip along Highway 9, as well as underground detention, etc. So the applicant is requesting, seeking a rezoning to C1, and I've already covered all those things. We'll go on. So this is the site currently undeveloped. I will make a comment. One of the planning commissioners had asked about the parcel next to this one to the south, across from the roadway or the little driveway, and that has a land disturbance permit currently for a urgent care facility. So that is what the little bulldozers are going over there. Okay, just a little background. The applicant submitted their land disturbance permit and building plans, and staff determined site. I don't know if you remember last year around this time or the summertime, we did a lot of edits to the various zoning districts, and one of them was to actually work on some uses that one could think was not the greatest use. And so we did work on this actual use of dry cleaning, and it's a definition of laundry and dry cleaning shop, which means a commercial establishment whose business is the cleansing of fabrics with non-aqueous organic solvents and may include laundering off-site. So basically, when we looked at the MIX mixed use district, it would allow for retail service commercial uses, but it did not say anything about this particular use. So that's why we requested that the applicant come in for rezoning to make everything legal as far as the use. So that's the purpose of going from MIX to C1. And also as a little history and background, the site has been zoned for probably since 1998, and it's gone through various iterations of different plans of it. And the only reason why I'm bringing it up, because it does affect some variances that are grandfathered into this site. So we'll talk about those as we go along. There was one in 1999, and there was one in 2000. And basically, once the Board of Commissioners approved it, the variances that were approved concurrently were vested with the property. We'll start speaking of the site plan. Development standards for C1, the front yard. Again, we look at the State Route 9 overlay district. This is actually the new standards that you all just adopted per the overlay, not the overlay, but the design guidelines. So it talks about having a maximum of 100 feet from right-of-way. I think it's a 50 or 60,000 square foot building. So it's consistent with that. When we look at side yards and rear yards, we actually look at the landscape requirements of the overlay district. And again, in this case, back in 1999, they received a concurrent variance to delete all landscape strips that are interior or adjacent to other commercial type uses. So therefore, there is not need for a variance, and there are no actual landscape strips around this property. I mean, there may be some green area and a few plants, but not the true landscape standard. Minimum lot frontage, 35 feet. It's consistent. Height, 30 feet for average grade to the roof eave is consistent. As far as, again, I already talked about the landscaping. But the front adjacent State Route 9, again, this is another caveat, another situation that happened with the conditions of the previous zoning. It says 10 feet based on conditions of zoning pursuant to RZ 0381. And then because of that condition, what happened was I did more research. I found that there was this condition that basically made the requirement of, you have a reservation line and you have a dedication line. And because there was so much area that was taken for the turn lane and the straight lane and the bicycle lane, it ended up that the reservation lane the dedication line was the same as the reservation line. So in that 2003 condition, within that zoning case, it said that when that happens, they only have to provide 10 feet of landscape strip. And then again, the side and rear yards, none are pursuant to BC 99-144. And because of that situation with the front landscape strip, staff is recommending withdrawal of BC 12-01 for not needing it. Again, as we look to the fencing standards of the overlay district, the applicant will provide the fencing for the State Route 9 overlay district, and we've asked them to be consistent with the Deerfield Place Shopping Center across the street. So that will also, that's already in the ordinance, so we don't need a condition for it, but I'd just like to point that out. Parking, it's consistent with the 17 provided and 16 required, so they're over by one parking spot. As it goes into the public involvement, we had the design review board review it, and they had no comments. In regards to the CBIM contact with that person, and so hopefully any issues that she's had, that has been addressed. The applicant submitted their public participation report in a timely manner as required by the ordinance, and it's in your packet for your review. I'll just go through some of the standards of review. I won't bore you with every one of them, but just highlight some that I believe is important. Whether or not the proposal will adversely affect the existing use or usability of adjacent or nearby property. It is staff's opinion that the proposal should not adversely affect existing use or usability of adjacent properties based on the applicant's proposed use for a dry cleaner. Whether the proposal is in conformity with the policies and intent of the land use plan. Per the 2030 Comprehensive Land Use Plan map, it recommends this area to be mixed-use living, working. The density is 5,453 square feet per acre, and that the site and the subject site and for properties north of Webb Road, retail service and is recommended for mixed-use living, working. And then retail service is in the southeast quadrant of Webb Road and State Route 9. Office on the south side of Webb Road with the exception of the southwest corner of Webb Road and State Route 9. The Milton City Council adopted the city's 2030 comprehensive plan on June 6, 2011. The request for mix to C1 is compatible with the suggested mixed-use living, working designation as outlined in the compatibility chart within the 2030 land use plan. It is also consistent with the following plan policy developed with the recommended, if it's developed with the recommended conditions. We will encourage mixed-use developments where appropriate that are human scale, less auto-oriented, and include neighborhoods that are walkable, bicycle, wheelchair friendly. So, in conclusion, the proposed rezoning is consistent with adjacent and nearby zonings and uses. In addition, it is consistent with the 2030 future land use plan, which recommends mixed-use living and working. Therefore, staff recommends approval conditional of RC 12-04 and withdrawal of VC 1201 based on zoning conditions for dedications and improvements. So that concludes staff's reports.
Thank you. Mr. Rollator.
Okay, George, could I ask a couple questions?
Sure.
Of Rob, and just quickly, I didn't see a disclosure report form for the applicant. Do we have that?
I got it in my package.
The applicant or Webb Road Promenade?
Webb Road Promenade.
Yeah, it's not the applicant.
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah,
It said, I read the top corner where it said Tide City Cleaner. Tide
yes,
Dry
we
Cleaner.
only, right now, we only have the architect for Agile for city, so we can have them figure it out as well.
Okay. And second question, what's the address of the property? In one place it says 12996 Windward Village Parkway. In the other it says 12990 Highway 9.
Correct. There are two different addresses. I think one is based on the tax parcel ID and the other one is the mailing address, so.
Okay.
That's it. Okay.
Mr. Chairman, members of the Planning Commission, I'm Don Rollator, 11660 Alpharetta Highway, Suite 630, Roswell, Georgia. I'm here tonight on behalf of the applicant, and I have with me Mr. Alex Munoz, who is the principal in Alex Munoz and Associates. I will keep this description short for you tonight so that we don't spend the evening here. Basically, somewhere along in the development process, as they were getting ready to go forward with this project, having been to Design Review Board twice and having obtained a land disturbance permit, we all determined, thanks to Robin's diligence, that we had a technical glitch in the zoning. The zoning is mixed, and because of the technical classification of this dry cleaner, it needs to be C1. There's a history lesson here. For years and years and years, one of the most wicked uses you could put on a piece of commercial property was a dry cleaning plant with this perchloroethylene product that's one of the nastiest things known to man. This is dry cleaners 2 or 3.0, which is entirely removed from that, but I understand why the difference still remains in the code sections. Procter & Gamble Corporation is the parent of Tide Dry Cleaners, as they are with Mr. Clean car washes. These are 2 new products that they have set forth on the market, and it is one of the most green and environmentally sound uses you can find in the dry cleaning industry. It is state-of-the-art today. Several years back, the state of California banned PERC, which just about shut down the dry cleaning industry. The state of California likes this product. They are underway with 4 or 5 applications at this time and have all been certified as environmentally no impact. So it's good stuff. Do you have to contain it in case of a spill? No. You can spill it out in the parking lot. You can swim in it. It has no ill effects. It is a silicone-based cleaning agent developed after lots of chemistry study and research that has allowed the dry cleaning industry to make itself clean, if you want to use those words. Mr. Munoz has designed a very attractive facility. It's an out parcel right in the middle of the Audi parking lot, and we are coming to you tonight basically on a technical idea to make sure that we get the zoning exactly right. We agree with staff that there is no more need for the variance for the 10-foot front setback. I agree with Robin, that's handled, so we'll note you now that we are dismissing that variance request because we don't need it. We think we are happy with all of the conditions that are on this. I would like to ask Robin to just confirm with me conditions 4A and 4B so that we're all clear. Robin, I would understand that our plan as submitted is in compliance with 4A and 4B. If you could confirm that with me, then we're ready to accept the conditions.
Yes, yes, I spoke to the transportation planner, and so everything, these are correct.
That's great. I appreciate it. If those are true, then we are in agreement with the conditions. It all makes sense to us. We look forward to proceeding with this, and I would like to ask you at this time, if you have any questions of us, please feel free to ask us. Mr. Munoz is here. Mr. Joe Tocco on behalf of the applicant, who has technical information if we need it, so that we all feel comfortable with this use. The unique thing about this property, it'll run about like an average dry cleaner, 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. It has a 24-hour drop box, where used to you would turn in your CDs or your DVDs when your children were through looking at them. Now, on your way in, if you go to work at 4:30 in the morning, you can drop your clothing off and have it clean. So if there's anything unique about this piece of property, that's about the only thing I can think of. We would appreciate your careful consideration. We would ask for a recommendation of approval, and we'd like to reserve any remaining time we have for rebuttal. We're happy to answer your questions.
Thank you. Is there anyone else that would like to speak in favor of the application, or do you want to reserve all your time for rebuttal? Seeing none. Anyone here who would like to speak in opposition?
I don't have any cards.
Okay. We need to close the public comment.
So moved.
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Questions? Let's start with questions for staff. Any questions for staff? Anyone?
I have a question regarding the, I don't know if it's for staff or for the applicant. Just to make sure I understand the entrance to the property and the exit of the property. If you are going north on Highway 9, there is no left-hand turn into the drive immediately adjacent to the intended site of the new business. You would have to go to either turn left at Webb and enter on the back side of the auto repair, or turn left north of the property and then circulate to the business within the confines of the property, correct?
That's correct, yes. There's no direct access to the property.
Okay, unless you're coming south and you would turn.
Right, yeah, you could take a right turn, but even that, there's a little, it's not directly into it. You have to still take another ride into the parcel.
Right. And Robin, did you say that the property immediately to the north is being developed?
South, I'm sorry if I said the north, but it's the south of it.
Okay,
On the other side of the
Yeah.
drive, existing asphalt drive.
okay, and that's gonna be what business?
It's another urgent care,
Okay,
American
that's
Family
right.
Care.
Thank you.
One more. Instead of the restaurant that's on their plans.
Correct. I mean, this plan has gone through many variations, so yes, that's what it is.
Robin, question. Under the proposed LCI design plans, most of parking is recommended to be on the opposite side of a building than what this is.
Yes, I believe that you're allowed to have, look, I think there's a percentage of that, so,
The whole strip center is set up wrong there.
yeah, they're all there. So,
Doesn't matter.
let me check that.
On this side.
Right.
Away from the street.
Right. Move the building towards the street.
Yeah.
It says on-site parking shall be located to the side and rear of buildings when possible. A maximum of 30% of the overall parking requirement for a development shall be placed in front of the building.
Maximum what percentage, Robin?
30%, but it also says when possible, so that's,
So is there anything precluding this building being flipped?
that would have to be answered by the applicant.
Or slid forward? And
Well,
the parking
that's-
goes
yeah,
in the back?
that's what I meant, sorry.
Because really, if they've got a drive-through, most of it's gonna be drop-off in the drive-through.
Yeah.
The rest of it's probably just to meet our own requirements.
Yeah.
But we can ask that of the applicant.
Robin,
Yes.
if this or not the property, but this ownership change, and Charlie Brown's dry cleaner buys it and decides to use regular dry cleaning chemicals, what prevents that?
Let's see. They would have to conform to that definition, and if they can't conform to the definition that I spoke of,
Mhm.
then they would have to probably try to rezone it to M1.
Back.
I mean, it would, not to
Oh,
mix, but I
M1,
mean.
M1,
if-
M1,
if-
okay.
If it wasn't consistent, they'd
Okay.
have to come back and
Okay.
rezone to even more intensive use, which I doubt that would happen.
Okay, well,
I mean, obviously it could, but.
okay.
Any other questions for staff?
No?
No.
Questions for the applicant?
Could I ask, Mr. Roletta, what's the name of the applicant? The applicant in the case. The reason I asked, I see Agile Pursuits in a certification. In Mr. Roletta's letters, I see Agile Pursuits, Inc. In the staff's paperwork, I see Agile Pursuits Franchising, Inc.
The acquisition entity is SJD Real Estate LLC, a Georgia limited liability company.
No, who's the applicant?
The applicant is Agile Pursuits, which is the acquisition arm of Procter & Gamble.
Okay, who's Agile Pursuits Franchising, Inc.?
The franchisee,
Agile Pursuits Franchising, Inc.
Agile Pursuits Franchising, Inc. is the division of Procter & Gamble that provides the sites and does the franchising to an end user when it's.
So they are not the applicant?
Mr. Tocco has filled out a card. He represents the applicant. Let me let him answer.
So, good evening, Joe Togo.
Agile Pursuits
Can you
franchising.
give us your name and address, please?
Joe Tocco, 1369 Briar Creek, St. Charles, Missouri.
Thank you.
And I'm representing APFI, which is an acronym for Agile Pursuits Franchising, Inc., which is a subsidiary of Procter & Gamble. So as the franchisor, there's a real estate arm that they're providing the service for the franchisees. So I'm part of that team. They're the applicant that's on this paperwork. But the team that is, the entity that is buying the land is the entity that Don just relayed.
So
Okay, start again. Who's the applicant?
The applicant on the paperwork is...
Who's the applicant? Who's applying, who's making the application for the variance?
Yeah.
Jesse Shannon, 272 Broadland Road, Atlanta 30342. I think it's a simpler question he's asking. Correct me if I'm wrong, is Agile Pursuits the same entity as Agile Pursuits Franchising, Inc.?
They are.
I think it was just a mistake on the application, to answer your question. I think Agile Pursuits Franchising, Inc. is the entity. Agile Pursuits was the short form of the actual Agile Pursuits Franchising, Inc. entity. Agile Pursuits was probably mislabeled. It should have had Franchising, Inc. on the end.
Okay, so to the extent wherever there's official documentation that says Agile Pursuits, it's incorrect.
Correct.
The correct entity is Agile Pursuits Franchising, Inc.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
So if Agile Pursuits Franchising, Inc. is the applicant, who's the franchisee?
No, it's the entity that you just gave. Yeah.
The franchisee is SJD.
The real estate LLC. Okay.
I'd like to ask, is it possible in your design to move the parking to the opposite side of the building itself?
I'm going to let Mr. Munoz respond to that. He designed it. My basic feeling is with the drive-through and with 0.6 of an acre, it would be difficult. Let me add him address that. Is that about right? Been doing this too long. Let me let you
My name is Alex Munoz, 452 East Paces Ferry Road. I'm with Alex Munoz and Associates, and I'm the architect on the
Can you
project.
speak up a little bit, please? Sorry. It's not the
Yeah,
microphone.
okay. There you go, a little closer. When we did the layout, it's unlike I'm going to call it a fast food restaurant where you want to queue all the way around. In this particular case, cars park on the left-hand side so that you have direct view of the person driving and the person serving, which is right at the front door underneath that canopy. So that essentially puts all the parking for employees on the left-hand side, and anyone that wants to go to the front door will park in those few spaces that are against Highway 9.
Yeah, I'm confused.
Yeah, the reason I ask is that we're right now in the process of doing an LCI, and part of the design in the LCI is to do most of the parking away from on the opposite side of the building from the street. In this case here, you've got yourself coming in off of Highway 9, if you're going south on Highway 9 and turning right in immediately into the parking area. What I'm asking is, could you put the parking, the entrance further down and just move the building to the...
I believe that there's a little bit of a slope down, and we could move the entrance in essence to the rear.
Yeah.
But there's already a curb cut that's been created right on that entrance. So we're following the original design intent of the overall shopping center that has that entrance there.
This is Jesse Shannon again, 272 Broadland Road, Atlanta, Georgia 30342. To maybe more accurately answer the question, part of the problem here is you're only looking at a portion of the existing development.
Mm-hmm.
There is already a drive and a curb cut that runs along the front of the Tide building as shown that ties into the parking field and drive aisle for Fifth Third Bank, which has acquired their parcel but is yet to pull permits to start construction, which I understand is to occur sometime here in the second quarter of this year. So if we push the drive to the back, I don't think we can maintain the circulation that is already in place. And the other point I would make, I certainly understand your desire to adhere to the LCI initiatives. All the outlots in front of this project have been sold, and all the buildings are set back with a general conformity. So as we start pulling those buildings to the front, pushing parking to the back, I'm not sure it would look consistent with what's already there. In addition to just the physical constraints that we have with the existing drive aisles and parking that's already in place.
I'm not, don't leave. I'm not
Sorry.
sure when you say the buildings that are already there, what you're talking about. There are no other buildings there.
What I mean is the approved site plans that were submitted along with the plats when those properties were originally closed. So it is my understanding that Fifth Third has been through the DRB hearing, as well as the urgent care facility, and those site plans have been approved. And so when those properties are developed, and the drive aisles were part of the civil package that was already approved, that there'll be general conformity along the front, and those drive aisles will match up. As soon as we start moving curb cuts, I'm not sure the existing development works if we start relocating.
Are you talking about the curb cuts on Highway 9?
No,
You're
no.
talking
The
about the curb
interior,
cuts
just to the
interior.
interior curb
Yeah.
cuts, correct.
Okay.
Yeah, not the curb cuts on 9, those are set in place.
And I would offer that if we're consistent with the application of some of the consideration being given by the LCI,
Yeah.
that all of those will be, we'll be asking the same question
We
of
won't
anything
see
that
'em.
comes before us.
We won't see
They're
'em.
up, done.
Yeah, I mean, that's.
They won't be,
We
I'm
won't
sorry,
see 'em.
excuse me, unless there's not a need for them
Oh,
to come to you,
yeah,
because
okay.
they're already fine. A bank can be an MIX, the medical building can be an MIX.
And there's our
It's
goal
about
and opportunity to
rezoning,
bring them all
not design
forward.
guidelines.
And you change the interior circulation of the traffic all to the back, which is what the LCI project is recommending in the first place.
Right.
So before we even get off the ground, we've already put a nail in our coffin.
Well, but the
Well,
problem.
Target, I mean, every shopping center we have is already like that, so I mean, you've got to take that for granted, I mean, with the LCI stuff already. You're not going to redesign every shopping center that's already in place.
No, but given an opportunity to do it now, why not?
Well, this is a
Why not?
rezoning, though, not a design guideline, I mean, that's not what we're asked to even consider.
But it's a condition that we can impose. We have that opportunity.
It's not a condition we can impose because it's not part of an ordinance.
No.
Yeah, the LCI is not. I will say that the section 641096A states on-site parking shall be located to the side and rear of buildings when possible. So, I mean, this has been a shopping center that was already designed. I mean, if it's the druthers of you all to make that more stringent and get rid of,
Well-
if possible, in the future. but-
Robin, how do we impose that, or even try to impose that here if these other properties have not
Yeah.
had that same condition applied to them?
Unfair.
Well, that's why, I think that's their out, is
Sure.
when possible.
I'm just looking at, the likely, if you just take the consideration of the traffic pattern that's going to happen here, if I understand from Mr. Shannon, the way that I'm just having to create a visual image of what's going to happen. It's not depicted here on the, without the benefit of the other businesses on here. But if it's all forward in the property, and you've got probably less than, I'll make an estimate, 20 feet from the Highway 9 curb cut to where traffic will be queuing, either coming off, to go right in the flow of traffic going south or coming off, you're just asking for a traffic congestion in a likely accident scenario happening right there because of the volume of traffic. If it's a high volume bank, if it's a high volume dry cleaners and something else high volume to the right of that, to the north of that.
Yeah, but to me, that's all driven by where the curb cut is. If you
Right.
brought the building forward and put the curb cut at the back of the property.
It all goes away.
Yeah.
My concerns all go away.
Yeah.
As
I mean,
as
the
do my
fact that there's a-
concerns for
the
the
fact that
LCI.
The fact that there's a curb cut there, so
Meaningless to
what?
me, yeah. Well, I think I just don't think we should overlook an opportunity to be proactive with what's happening with the LCI project, to be proactive with reducing the likelihood of an accident because of the volume of traffic queuing within such a short entrance point right there where the circulation is likely to bring it through. I just think we're missing an opportunity to be doing the right thing.
Can I make a point, excuse me? This LDP was approved prior to the redoing of the Highway 9 requirements, so to be fair, the whole not subdivision, the whole development in general was constructed and approved prior, not to the Highway 9 overlay district standards, but to the standards that we adopted as the design guidelines with the parking in
Right.
the rear. So
Yeah,
That-
if a new car comes out and it's designed with an airbag, and I have an opportunity to put an airbag into it, and just because it was approved before that they didn't have to have airbags, why would I miss an opportunity to reduce the opportunity for injury? It's the same scenario here. I'm just offering the consideration. I recognize it may not be fair based on those things, but we're given an opportunity to be compliant with our vision for the future of this area. We shouldn't be bound by standards that may now be dated. Mr. Munoz, you wanted to say something?
I just wanted to clarify that the parking lot's going to be designed all the way across the front.
Right, which is my point.
And so this is already in place, that curb cut is in place, this curb cut is in place.
Yeah.
So it.
No, I get it. But it's concrete, repouring some concrete versus saving a life, I'll choose to report concrete.
See, the problem you're going to run into with that emergency dock in a box going up next, right across the driveway there for you, is any traffic coming in, your people trying to come back out right there, you're going to have an issue with people going in and out of your location because of this location next to Highway 9 there. That's what Paul is talking about. And I mean, it may not be that we make it a stipulation, which is I'm asking you to look at it and see if you can help us in this case, since we do have this LCI coming up, in which we're trying to get the guidelines as close to what it will be then when we adopt that.
Yeah, because it's too short here, and there's going to be bank traffic from here, and it's already designed to be flow through.
Yeah, I'm still,
For whatever business is going to go here.
Robin, I'm still struggling with the ones that have already been approved. I mean, what you're citing is not in the LCI, it's already in there.
Correct,
And
yes.
you're right, it says where possible, but why wasn't the where possible applied to the other parcels?
because they didn't come in, so the NTB came in for permitting prior to the adoption.
I don't mean NTB, I'm talking about
I
the other
know, I'm
ones
just
that are.
going down the road
Okay.
because it was inferred that all the buildings, I mean, obviously that's built, but I'm just giving you some history.
Okay,
That one was done prior, and then, for
the third bank.
the Fifth Third Bank has not come in. When we look at their land disturbance permit, we can see
Okay.
if we can get them
And
to
what about
switch
the-
out, so
what
the
about
parking
the-
is in the rear.
What about the urgent care facility?
The urgent care was already permitted, so,
Was that question asked?
I don't do the review, so I can't answer that question. But I will go back to the overall design of the shopping center. I will say that our public works transportation planner looked at this. So she's gonna look at the queuing and the lengths. So I want to make sure that you understand that it wasn't like they just threw in these curb cuts wherever they wanted.
Oh, no, I understand that.
Yeah, I just,
Yeah, we're just offering the benefit of some additional thinking that's gone into it, coming from the LCI project. I also just think that, the traffic pattern that's we're likely to experience as a result of the three businesses being lined up there is one that raises a safety issue for me.
and we will definitely look at that more closely when Fifth Third comes in for their land disturbance permit. They have not come in yet, so.
I just don't, it's a naive simplicity that I'm trying to imply here, or trying to impose here, which is you just take those parking spaces that are lined up in the front,
what I was just looking at.
and you make a traffic flow across the back of those three businesses rather than across the front. They still get the benefit of the full exposure of the business. You're just moving the parking to the back, and you're moving the curb cut to the back where it's a greater distance from Highway 9. So that you're allowing for the queuing of more cars in a safer environment there.
Did you say that the most of the traffic would be parked in the front, the 3 or 4 cars that are right next to the building, but that the parking spaces out towards the street were employees?
We have parking over here, and we've got a little bit of parking on the side.
Mm-hmm.
It's very unlikely that you will have customers parked on the side, and this is a sort of one-way drive.
Right.
So people are going to come in, they're going to park here. You would have most likely employees there and employees there. But in reality, there's the drive-through that is the majority of the customers.
Right.
But we're,
Being a service.
so the employees would be parking on the front?
No, he's saying
No,
to
on
the,
the south
to
side.
the
He's
south
saying
side of the building.
they're going
or-
to park here and there, not over here. They would use some of these,
Okay,
or some of these,
right.
and the ones on the side.
Well, I was just thinking, if I'm looking at a building, there's constantly cars parked.
And given the
Great
traffic
level.
flow being one way in this direction, even if we were to come in from this side, you're asking customers to do a full U-turn.
Mhm.
It's slightly, I don't know that we can actually have enough turning radius in there to make that U-turn. I mean, we'll be happy to look at it with staff, but this went through review, we went through design review board, we got an LDP.
Right. Yeah.
So we'll be happy to look at it again.
I guess what we're
Size and
asking
see
is
what
you
they say.
help us out here if you can.
Yeah, and just, because this is a part of Highway 9 that has had the biggest part of a current upgrade, it's right now part of the gateway of Milton. And so it's going to be important to us to try to, if it's not already there, to take every opportunity we can to instill what we intend the future look of that to be. Obviously, it's very hard to change it, and it's likely to be without change for 15 to 20 years based on the expectation of the likelihood of the survival of these businesses in their current location before there's going to be turnover of some kind, just through historical patterns in that. So we're looking at 15, let's call it even 10 years of whatever this is until we have a chance to improve it again. If we're literally within months of approving an LCI standard here, it's just a shame to miss it by about 8 weeks. But there would be a different set of standards that would help us for the long term create the look and feel that we're intending to have for the building. So to Gary O's point, if there's a consideration that you can give it, obviously we can't impose it. We sure would appreciate that.
We'll get together with engineers, and we'll get together with staff, and we'll get together with the owner of the other pieces that we don't control.
Sure.
And see what we can do to improve, see if it's possible.
Great, thank you.
Could I change the line of questioning a little bit? As I look at the elevation here, irrespective of how green this is, I'm sure because of the temperatures involved and so on, there's going to be some pretty sophisticated ventilation equipment on the roof, right? Is that correct?
That's correct. It's
So-
a air-conditioned building.
So how high is the parapet wall on this building?
Actually, the building has essentially it has a step down. The front is higher where the conveyor system is. Then on the lower back sort of steps down, but the parapet stays level. So the large mechanical units that we have in the middle of it, which are mostly air conditioning units, will be completely hidden from view all the way around.
So the parapet wall will
Parapet wall all
exceed
the
the
way
height
around.
of the units on the roof?
Absolutely.
Okay. Questions?
That's it for me.
Joe? Mark? Chris? Carol? Nope. Okay, we need a motion.
George, before we do that, how do we handle the withdrawal? Has the applicant formally withdrawn?
You can make two different, I'm sorry,
Yeah.
you can make two different motions. Make a motion for the actual RZ number and then a motion to withdraw for the
On
VC
the
number.
variances. Okay. Why don't we deal with the variances first? That's the easy one.
Okay, I make a motion that we recommend approval of RZ 12-04,
I'll
No,
second it.
subject
no,
to,
no, other way around.
What?
I'm sorry, you're right, VC 12-01,
Right.
subject to staff's recommendations contained in their documentation.
Okay.
I'll second it.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, unanimous. Now, PRZ.
I make a motion that we recommend approval of the withdrawal of RZ 12-04.
No, no, no,
BC, other way around.
other way around.
BC.
We already did the withdrawal, we just approved it.
I'm sorry. Let me try it. I make a motion, we recommend approval of RZ 12-04 with staff's recommended changes.
Okay.
And subject to the applicant filing the disclosure report, Form C.
I'll second that.
Any discussion? While we can't impose it as a condition, I think the applicant has indicated a willingness to look at modifying their site plan to try and reflect what we are looking for LCI, so,
LCI and safety.
you know, from a timing standpoint, that's something that we would encourage you to do before you get to city council is all. Any other discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, unanimous. Thank you.
Okay, the next item is RZ 12-03. It's a request to amend Article 18 of Chapter 64 of the City Code, it's the Historic Preservation Commission. Basically, this is another attempt to get the Historic Preservation Commission ordinance in line with the State Department of Natural Resources Historic Division, as well as the legislation for HPCs. After the last time that this was before the council and approved on October 17, 2011, after review by the state, it was found that there were some inconsistencies between the approved one and the state requirements. So, the following are the main issues that were inconsistent with the enabling legislation, which are also highlighted in yellow in the proposed text amendment. Deletion of design review board based on the fact that HPC will now review all buildings, whether they are contributing or non-contributing, under the definition of historic. The second item, the deletion of the word famous, as it is too arbitrary. The historic resource only has to meet one of the 7 qualities, not all or some. The third point, needed to choose between non-historic and non-contributing. The fourth point, increase the number of official voting HPC members to be appointed from the list of professionals from 1 to 3. Needed to ensure there were continual city staff to work with the HPC and coordinate with the city council. Next one is deleted the requirement that no building shall be moved from the original location to be considered a historic structure. It would limit the number of designated historic structures. Next, included objects to be considered for a certificate of appropriateness. And lastly, under the appeals section, amended to be consistent with the enabling legislation. And then the remainder of the changes were recommended by the city attorney that are reflected in just red. So based on the above analysis, staff recommends the text changes as submitted. The approval of this text amendment will enable the Historic Preservation Commission to continue their work and to recommend structures and in the future districts to the City Council for historic designation.
Questions for staff. Is there anybody here speaking in favor of or opposition to this amendment by any chance? I don't see anybody out there that looks. I guess not. Okay. Questions?
George, how do we, with the benefit of some work prior to this where we talked about, for example, on page 1, the certificate of endorsement not having any value to the current document, do we need to bring that up again in this meeting to suggest that those kinds of things take place?
Yeah, because I think ultimately what we're gonna have to do is either move that this be approved with specific changes
Yeah.
or move that it be rewritten and come back to us.
Then okay, so your call, do you want to do page by page again, or do you want to take it by chunk?
Well, I think, personally, I think if our objective is to get this thing in a form that we can recommend it move forward to the council with changes, then I think we need to go item by item and recommend those specific changes.
Yeah, that's kind of where I was too. Okay,
Agreed.
well,
So let's do it a section at a time if we can, because I think we're gonna have problems. Robin, is your document gonna be the same as
Yeah, it
ours in
is,
terms of
mine.
numbering and everything?
Yeah.
Okay. So any changes in 64, 24, 51, first section? Anything we
No.
need? Okay, how about 24, 52?
yes.
All right,
Just, the certificate of endorsement doesn't appear anywhere deeper in the document, so I don't know that we need that definition at this time. And it could be punted.
okay.
I'm sorry, I was moving stuff.
The certificate of endorsement, Robin,
Okay,
third one from the bottom,
okay,
it doesn't appear to have any value to the document,
okay,
so we're suggesting that it be struck.
yes.
That's all I have on page 1, George.
Okay, anything on page 2? Anybody else on page 1? Assuming not, okay, page 2.
Page 2, I think the one we talked about was the historical means belonging, that paragraph.
The feeling and association.
Right.
Right.
You want them deleted, or you don't like it, or you want it changed, or?
Well, it says, it's been changed. We had 3, they changed, 3, and they say it only has to be 1 of the 7 qualities. So if we just, the point we made was that if it feels good, it's okay.
Yeah. I would suggest that we strike feeling and association, have it end with and workmanship, period.
And make it 1 of 5.
And make it 1 of 5, at least 1 of 5. Hey, my goodness, at least 1 of 5.
Absolutely. Okay?
Anybody take any exception to that?
No, I'm fine with that.
Nope.
Did you get that, Robin?
Yes.
The next one, George, we talked about was this historic district.
Right.
Not having something in it about a historical item. Now, they said works of art. I didn't follow that. Does that qualify?
Well, I guess the question is, do we recommend that we strike the whole historic district thing again?
Well, that's true too.
That's the best question, I think.
I would support striking historic district altogether. I think it eliminates a multitude of problems. And it's not necessary or required by the state.
Okay.
And if at such time that there's a better definition and somebody wants to bring it forward with one that doesn't impose so many complications that are difficult to administer, then you revisit this and it goes in. But at this time, I just think it just burdens this document to the point where it's very troubling.
I agree.
Given, with all respect to Carol and to Mark, who weren't part of this before, I mean, I think we've gone through this process once before with that recommendation.
Ad nauseam.
So for me personally, I would want us to recommend that we take it out, but in the event that it's kept in, there needs to be some changes.
Yeah.
Can I make a suggestion?
Sure.
Just from talking with the state and reading the state enabling legislation, I'm pretty sure we would not get approval from the state if we took out the allowance for the historic district. So if you wanted to clarify it, you know, if you're not comfortable with the definition, I would ask that you just clarify the definition and let's take that track as opposed to taking it out altogether, because that's really is a major component of the whole preservation program.
So could we just take out the word district?
Well, that defeats the purpose.
Yeah.
Well, historic, if it's historic, but it doesn't necessarily have to be district.
Well, I'm
the
saying
idea
we
is
need
define
to
a specific
include
area,
a provision for a
geographic.
historic district.
Yeah. So, Angela, does that suggest that there is no, is this called an ordinance?
Yes.
Does that mean that that suggests that there is no historic preservation ordinance in the state of Georgia or that would qualify? Not having that in it? They don't exist without that district?
I mean, that would ultimately be a question for the state, but basically, yes. I mean,
Do we know that as a
Yeah.
fact, or are we just implying that that's the case?
no, I mean, I'm 99.9% sure that's the fact. I mean, it's an essential tool of the historic preservation program.
Yeah, they certainly seem to use it.
I mean, you don't have to do it, but I don't think you can preclude it altogether. I mean, it's a pretty big part, pretty essential part.
So what are some examples of a historic district?
Well, Roswell has one, Camp Street, the whole area down to the square.
Norcross has one, Swanee has one,
Are they primarily commercial?
Lawrenceville,
Yeah.
Beaufort.
No, they can be residential.
Well, it can be, but are those, the examples that you just cited, are there residential mixed in with those, or are
No,
those primarily
Roswell is.
commercial?
Roswell is.
It is commercial, or residential as
Yeah,
well?
it's mixed.
I'm familiar with Canton, but I can't think of any freestanding
No,
residents.
she was talking about Canton Street.
I'm sorry?
She was talking about Canton Street, Roswell.
Yeah, that's like-
And then street that goes down.
Well, yeah, it's got to be bounded by
They're
it.
all over the
Rome, Georgia is a mix.
Savannah.
Of course.
Right. But
Yeah, Savannah's a little bit different story.
is,
I mean, you know, ours isn't going to look like Savannah, of course, but I mean, I don't think we can take it out altogether.
but is this
Well,
one of
let's-
the 10 blankets, that idea that
think
if
we're-
you're under that, non-conforming and conforming
This is the
again,
issue.
this is where I can't do anything
Yeah, that's
if
right.
I'm not historic, correct? I mean, that I have not been designated historic.
You can't,
If I'm your district,
If you're non-conforming,
right, I'm a non-conforming,
and you're in the district,
this
You-
blanket.
Non-contributing.
you are, if you're, yeah, I'm
Right,
sorry,
not
non-contributing.
contributing, not-
If you're in the district, you are bound by the rules of
Right,
this
that's
designation. Within the
Well,
district.
that's the thing, if you're non-contributing and what you're doing is less than 25%, you're not bound by the rules.
well, that's
of
not
the
what you,
ordinance.
that's not what you said before the meeting. 'Cause that's-
Right,
that's-
anything over 25%, then you're bound by it, but if you're not, if it's under
Exactly.
25% contributing or not, then you're not.
But
But-
Angela, that's the point I made when we were in the work session beforehand, and you said that I was interpreting it wrong. That's exactly
No.
the interpretation that I
No,
placed
we
on
were
it.
looking at something else, the certificate of appropriateness. You need a certificate of appropriateness
Then you're
no matter
bound-
what.
Then you're bound by this.
Well, no, it's two different things. It's the certificate of appropriateness pretty much for anything except painting. You just have to get permission. But the by bound by, I mean the Secretary of Interior's requirements for renovation or new construction or whatever in our historic district guidelines. That's what I mean by bound by. So it's two different levels.
Yeah, but if I want to change my landscape plan, if I want to change my front door and I'm a non-contributing structure or residence in that
You just
district,
need a certificate of appropriateness,
But
but
I
there are
have
no
to-
guidelines that you have to follow.
but the point is I have to get it. I have
Yeah.
to, and if I can't
And
clear
the
it,
agency has the
then I'm-
discretion to say no.
then I'm bound by that because I can't clear it. I'm bound by the requirement to get the certificate of appropriateness.
Right, but there are no design criteria that you have to follow.
Right, so I'm being subject to somebody's whim because
Well,
there's
it's just
no,
a cursory-
there's no definitive guideline that says,
Well, but this is inherent.
Well, it's just like an architectural review board in your neighborhood. I mean, that's exactly right.
You know, so, you're fighting a district that isn't even formed yet. It gives them the authority to go out there and ask the public if they want one. That's what you're allowing that to move forward.
But the public doesn't have a choice.
Yes, they do. I mean, if there are enough property owners in a proposed historic district that stand up and say no, then I assume council will respect that.
And if you really philosophically
Like
oppose
assumptions.
that, you should just oppose this whole ordinance, and we shouldn't be going through it line by line.
Well,
If you really just want to kill it, and that's fine, but, you know.
We tried that.
We tried that.
We tried that,
was
didn't
already-
work.
Well, all right, but, you can't have it both ways.
Well, but the thing is, it's taking the freedom away from an individual owning property that all at once, the blanket comes over and says, hey, I can't do it. So
I
that's,
understand that, but we're getting back to the philosophic issue here. You have an ordinance before you that allows it to have certain duties, and I know you don't like some of those duties. And if you don't like it, then you should just say, you can't accept this ordinance. The other alternative is to go through it line by line.
well, or I think one of the things that I suggested was we find a way to write in a clause that says if you're a homeowner that is there in a non-contributing property.
We're going in circles. The enabling legislation says that, you're in a district, you're in a district, and that you're going to be
Right.
bound by the certificate of
But I'm suggesting
appropriateness.
until such time that the property changes hands. It's entirely different if somebody is moving in by choice to the district that's already been established. It's remarkably and entirely different if it's being put upon me as an existing homeowner there, and I didn't buy in under those conditions. That's two very different
Well,
things.
the way it works is that there's a public hearing, and the council votes on whether or not a district should be formed. And then it's formed, and then you're in it. And that's part of what an HPC does. So that's the whole idea, is to protect these historic areas. And you just can't rewrite the way it should work.
Sure I can. That's the opportunity I've been given right now.
Well,
But I'm trying, but I'm not getting a whole lot of cooperation.
you can't, but, it's not, it doesn't follow the enabling legislation, it will never be approved, and you'll kill the whole thing. So I'm saying, if you want to kill it, but, doing that is just as good as killing it. I mean, it's just not going to work. I mean, it's inherent in
You're
this.
taking out the heart of the whole.
Yes, you're taking out the heart, and then it's dead, so.
I don't really understand the value that we bring to this then, because if I'm being told I have to do something, when I'm given a chance to review this and impose my concerns, and they're being told I might as well not suggest I have any concerns, what's the value? What's the value?
Well, then,
There's none.
You want accepting the idea of having a historic preservation commission and all the rights and duties that go with it, that flow from the state.
Not when they're imposing their will on a landowner that has bought a property not subject to those terms and conditions today, and it's being imposed upon them after the fact.
Well, what's the difference from any other overlay that we have enacted on existing properties? I mean, your
their
leaders have,
grandfather, their grandfather.
Yeah.
up to a certain point.
Well,
That's
that's my
it.
point. I'm
Right.
trying to write in something up to a certain point.
Well,
Until the
you
property
have the
changes hands. At
25%.
that point, it is subjected to all the terms and conditions implied.
But we don't have that now.
Sure we do.
With not the property changing hands, we still have the condition of a certain percentage of change, right?
Well, you know,
But,
if you
yeah,
want to
that's-
put something in and have our attorneys review it, you know, fine.
I mean, yeah, I mean,
It'll have to
if
be
you want to
reviewed by our
clarify
attorneys,
it.
and they're going to have the last say, so.
Yeah, and I get that.
Okay.
This document gives this HPC, I mean, if somebody puts a roof on without approval, they have authority just to sue them
Right.
on their own.
Right.
I mean,
They
that's
do.
just
Yeah,
the
which
way
I don't see how
the
they
way
can
it's
do that
currently
as
written.
an
you know?
advisory commission. I mean, they're not elected officials, I mean, how are they able to initiate any action like that?
But it's in there, Chris.
I know it is, that's why I don't understand that.
Well, let's, one thing at a time.
Right.
We got to remember that this is, the one thing that's different now than when we looked at this last time is that we're not being asked to look at the ordinance, because the ordinance has already been
It's already
passed.
done, yeah.
We're only being asked to look at the amendments. And so, and given the history we've had, I mean, while I don't disagree with anything that's been said, I think we've got to try and figure out how to make the best of this, given the boundaries that we've got.
True.
I mean, I personally would prefer, given that we're not going to win the argument on the historic district front, that we add a fourth criteria in the definition that says that the historic district means a geographically definable area, blah, 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 which, and make it number 4, includes at least one historic property. Because my biggest fear, and it goes back to what I said before, my biggest fear with the conversations that I had before around at least the commission's idea of what they wanted to do from a historic district was nothing more than to put up signage that designated an area, and they didn't care whether there was historic properties in there. They wanted to designate Birmingham and Crabapple and those things where the area had a history of itself. I don't want those signs put up and have no historic properties, and all of a sudden every property in there has got to be subject to this process.
Can you just clarify that to be historic, something like eligible for historic designation?
No.
No.
An
Well, there's
approved
a
historic property.
Well, that's that we wouldn't approve a single property historic and then put a district around it.
Why not?
It would be one or the other.
Why not?
Because that's double kill.
What do you mean it's double kill? I don't understand.
We wouldn't designate a single building historic in the district. If it's a group of properties, we're going to designate the whole, we're going to do it all at once. We're not going to take one single property and designate it historic.
So there's nothing
If we
to-
know we're going to put a district there.
There's nothing to prevent it, though, if you.
Well, no, but it just doesn't work like that.
So if after
So
a
if
district is
Mark-
historic, you can't have a house declared historic in it?
If Mark comes up and says, hey, I want my house declared historic, I believe my house is historic, you're going to say, sorry, we aren't thinking about that as a district, so we're not going to consider your application.
No, that's not what I'm saying. We had, if it's out in the hinterlands, fine, we'll designate a particular house or building or whatever historic. But if there's a house, say in Crabapple, where we are currently looking at a historic district, the HBC is probably not going to take on that designation at this time, knowing that a month later they're going to do a district. That's why I would say just make it a historic, a property that's historic, that's eligible for historic designation.
What if that property is eligible and doesn't get approved as an historic property?
That's what I mean. It wouldn't be approved individually if it's in a
That's not
potential
what I'm
district.
asking. What if you approve the district and the property is turned down?
Well, it wouldn't be. If it's in the district and it's contributing, it's historic.
That's not what the definition says.
You wouldn't. You're not designating. If it's in the district and it's contributing, it's historic.
What defines a contributing property? There's no
It's in the
definition.
definition. There's a definition.
Why don't we just go with this one, how can the lawyer look at it?
I mean, Angela, I'm not going to argue with you. The definition of a contributing property could be designated contributing but not be historic.
If it's in the district and it's contributing, it's automatically historic.
It is not.
Yeah, go back.
I mean, that may be what you want, but that is not what this says. contributing properties, it's the same thing as a historic district. There's nothing in the word contributing that says that it has to be designated a historic property. The criteria for his,
Non-contributing also states that it's non-historic, so.
I'm sorry?
Non-contributing also states that it's non-historic.
But it doesn't say it's not a historic property.
See, you're missing the point. You created a definition of a historic property, which means that it's got to be officially designated as such pursuant to this article. That's what we're trying to get to, is that, at least I am, is I want to make sure that an historic district includes something that's been officially designated as an historic property and gone through that process. Pardon me?
It doesn't work like that.
Why not?
Why? Because you don't want it to?
That's just not how it's done.
Not the way it's set up.
Yeah. I mean, that's the whole point of doing a district, so you don't have to go through and declare each individual building as historic.
Well, we're not saying declare each individual historic. We're saying that if you're going to have a historic district, you need to have a historic property that's already designated as a historic property.
Would it satisfy you if we said it has to have an historic property that's been designated either concurrently or prior to the designation of the district?
I mean,
That works.
Yes, because it will be constructed concurrently, so that.
Concurrently works for me.
Yeah,
I'm okay
sure.
with that.
That'll work.
So we say at least concurrently or prior to the designation.
So it has to contain at least one historic property that's been so designated either prior to or concurrent with the historic district designation.
At least one.
Yes, at least one. Anything else?
Historic property, did you say, George?
Yes. Yeah, as opposed to resource or
Right.
historic significance.
Yep.
Yeah. Anything else on page 2?
No, I'm still catching up.
I'm going to ask a question that's probably going to seem kind of unorthodox, but this is obviously going to take us a little bit more time to get through this. I think at least some of the people out here, including Caleb, are here to talk about the LCI. Rather than having them sit here and wait through all this, can we suspend our discussion of this and
We
move on
only
to
have
the
12
LCI
pages
and come
to
back
go.
to it? Yeah. I think in fairness to the audience, I think that would be more appropriate, but we need a motion to do that.
I move that we suspend our discussion of the, what are we calling this?
HPC ordinance.
HPC ordinance to allow the Highway 9 Georgia 400 Livable Centers Initiative planning project presentation to take place, and then to resume our discussion of the historic preservation article immediately thereafter.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
Good move.
Good move.
Robin, do we need to call it, or?
I'm sorry, I was just writing down information. The next item is the Highway 9 Georgia 400 Livable Centers Initiative Planning Project presentation, and I believe Eric Bozeman is here for that presentation, as well as Michelle McIntosh Ross to answer any of your questions.
Hi, I just want to introduce a little bit. My name is Michelle McIntosh with City of Kirtland Planning Department. As you know, the for the comp plan, this Highway 9 DFW area was identified as a area for future development, as well as an area needing a master plan. We went ahead and got some LCI funding, to do this master plan, and we've been working on this for 6 months, since August of last year, and on May 12th, we had a joint work session. Some of you were able to attend to hear the presentation on the draft. Now we have a draft document available, and tonight we'll discuss that and hear your comments on the actual draft document. And I present Eric Gosman to discuss that.
Eric, I apologize. I don't know where in the world Caleb came from.
Quite all right. First of all, let me say thank you very much, and my babysitter thanks you as well, so that she can get home and get homework done this evening. What we'd like to do, I think, is very quickly go back through the presentation for the benefit of those commissioners that were not able to come to the work session a couple weeks ago. But it will be by far the short version of the presentation, not the full presentation that we took an hour with a couple of weeks ago. But to hit a couple of the high points, the LCI plan was designed, and what's the process here is that LCI plans always go through the City Council for adoption, and the proper step is to bring it through you as the Planning Commission, because essentially, once adopted, the LCI plan becomes a more detailed amendment to your comprehensive plan. It is a policy document. It informs future decisions. The teeth of it really goes into altering your zoning code and your development regulations, which are a follow-up step. So the LCI plan in and of itself is an amendment to the comp plan and a policy document until it is implemented through those more detailed means. The LCI was designed to really enhance and ferret out the community vision for the area, informed with a detailed market assessment, which is typically not part of the comprehensive plan. It provides additional detail to the comp plan, includes recommendations for zoning and design standards that are built off of your Deerfield overlay and your Highway 9 design guidelines, and tries to implement some of those same things as you cross the municipal border into Alpharetta, as part of Alpharetta is in the study area. And also seeks to prioritize all of the transportation improvements, the public improvements that have come through your other documents that you've worked on over the last several years. The process has been carried out in 3 steps. There's been an inventory and assessment of existing conditions, including a land use and urban design analysis, a transportation analysis, and a market analysis. We've had a series of 4 public work sessions and 4 core team meetings. The core team was a group of community leaders designated by the City of Milton and the City of Alpharetta, who has served as a focus group throughout this process. It's also included stakeholder interviews and an online survey with over 500 participants through the process in that manner. And then the action plan, which is putting the document together, prioritizing the projects, and putting together what the next steps are. Very, very quickly, the existing conditions. The study area includes Windward Parkway from Georgia 400 to Cockburn Road, and the Highway 9 corridor from Mayfield on the south end, just north of downtown Alpharetta, up to Bethany Bend. That's the study area that has been selected for this process, where much of the detail has been paid. As you know, the Highway 9 design guidelines of Milton go farther north than Bethany Bend. We would naturally expect that some of the treatments here, that you would consider applying those to parts north where applicable. To give you a little bit of context, about a third of the study area is the City of Alpharetta, indicated in blue on the map. A little over 70% is the City of Milton. There are a number of existing land uses today, single-family dwellings, multifamily dwellings, significant portions of commercial along Windward Parkway and Highway 9, and a significant area zoned office primarily over in the Deerfield area between Windward and Webb Road. And then just a few institutional and park parcels, leaving only those white parcels in the middle, which are those parcels that are yet to be developed. And when we overlay some of the environmental conditions, you'll notice that the reason that some of those properties are undeveloped is because they have streams and wetlands and other environmental conditions that prevent them from doing so, or at least has prevented them to date as being popular ones. Also important to note is how quickly this area has developed over the last 15 years. Be mindful that these LCI plans are 20-year plans. So if most of this area has developed over the last 15, we're looking out at least that far moving forward for some of these recommendations. And you'll see that this area was partially developed in the 90s, but then significantly between 2000 and 2005 prior to your incorporation, and then another significant amount of development from 2006 to the present day. When we conduct a little bit of an analysis of this area, then we're looking for what are the parcels that are sort of have opportunities to change over the horizon of this plan over the next 10 to 20 years. And most of those we've coded in red. Those are those vacant parcels. And then we have some in orange, which are a low susceptibility to change, but probably your second greatest opportunity other than vacant parcels are properties that were developed as retail strip centers that start to get towards their 10 to 15 year life cycle. Most of those facilities are built with a 10 to 15-year life cycle, and at that point they require reinvestment or redevelopment. This plan thinks that far down the road. What happens when we get to the end of that life cycle? What's the type of development that we need to be looking for to maintain and enhance the quality and the character of the area, as you all so aptly have already discussed this evening. We've looked at the transportation network, the existing roads, the existing sidewalk, the limited amount of transit that's in the area today with bus routes that, frankly, from what we've heard from the public, don't work particularly well. We've also taken our cue from the Milton Trail Plan that is still in progress, as well as all of the existing transportation plans that have been done today, including the Milton Comprehensive Transportation Plan, the North Fulton Comprehensive Transportation Plan, and Atlanta Regional Commission's Plan 2040. Those projects alone are probably enough to keep you busy for the next 20 years. So this process has really been about looking at the interplay between land use and transportation, and based on that, what transportation projects may be the highest priority and how we find funding and get those implemented more quickly. Just a very few market highlights. As you all know, we've been in a recession since 2009. We don't expect that we're returning back to the good old days or bad old days of 2006, depending on your perspective. But we do see slow growth starting to happen in the market. Makes this a particularly good time to be doing this type of work so that you're prepared for the next wave of development. And a couple other key facts. When we look at folks that live in the area, about 90% of your residents commute out. I'm sorry, I've got that backward. Yes, I don't have it backwards.
You're right.
Of people that are living in the area, 90% of them work somewhere else. And of people that work in the area, 77% of those people live somewhere else. So 90% commuting out every day, 77% commuting in. That leads to a bunch of traffic and tells us that we probably need to look at the jobs housing balance a little bit and our housing strategies and opportunities moving forward to help not fix at that level of disparity, but at least mitigate and help some of our traffic issues. From a market standpoint, the development opportunities, even if you do nothing different, you're going to see more opportunities for senior housing. You have a lot of folks that are aging in place or would like to age in place that have very few places to go if they want to stay in Milton and in North Fulton. There are opportunities for young professionals, folks that work in the area that aren't looking for the size home or the product that's on the ground today. And there are some additional opportunities for retail development, but not anchorless strip centers. You pretty much cornered the market on those. We know we can't fill those on the ground. What opportunities there are for office and retail are in more of a clustered environment. I don't really think it's mixed use. It's not in terms of vertical mixed use, at least not in the short term. It's very difficult to finance. But there is an opportunity to continue to cluster development the way you have it in Deerfield today to allow retail and residential and office to work with each other in a more clustered, walkable format that would be very advantageous to those seniors and to those young professionals who may not necessarily want the lifestyle where they have to get in their car and go very far for those goods and services. So that's the background to the public input. We mentioned we had the survey. The survey looked both at what the community's vision was for the Windward-Deerfield area, as well as opportunities to dress up development along Highway 9, which leads us to architectural and landscape standards that are included in the plan, and opportunities for open space, most of those from community comment being of a passive nature, looking for pocket parks to preserve open space as it is today where we have it, to incorporate trails, but not really looking for so many community gathering areas or for active recreation within this particular part of the city. A couple of highlights from the short answer. I think it's interesting that most folks said their perception of the Windward-Deerfield area is that it could use a little bit of dressing up, but generally is pretty good the way it is. On Highway 9, more folks said, you know, we really need some redevelopment, reinvestment, additional standards to improve the look of Highway 9 so it doesn't look like a commercial corridor in anywhere else USA. We want it to ascribe more to Milton and Alpharetta's high quality of life and character. And most folks that took the survey recognize that Windward-Deerfield is more of a regional center, whereas Highway 9 is where most of our local goods and services need to be. Having regional in this area where it's capturing traffic before it gets to Highway 9. And so our concept plans moving forward show some of that. We involved the public through this process through a variety of materials, not just the surveys, but picture exercises, marker exercises, building blocks, cross sections, we tried to really help the public understand some of the issues and challenges and took their input very seriously through those series of public workshops and the surveys. Leads us towards the recommendations. What the plan does is it takes your comprehensive plan where you have the Deerfield character area and the Highway 9 character area and breaks it down into more distinct districts with a greater level of detail. A regional activity center clustered between Windward and Webb, a McGinnis Ferry transitional area north of Webb, a local activity center where most of your big box and retail is today on Highway 9, transitional areas that help buffer your single-family neighborhoods from that more intense commercial uses. And then for the city of Alpharetta, there's a little North Main Street Alpharetta to build off of their city center investments. To hit a few of the highlights, the Regional Activity Center, to the extent that you're going to foster any intensity, any type of density, the Regional Activity Center is really the place to maximize your opportunities moving forward. It has the greatest access and visibility to Georgia 400, to Windward Parkway, to your higher capacity roads, and the least potential to impact your stable single-family neighborhoods because it's the farthest away from those. So to the extent that you're going to have any type of intensity, the Regional Activity Center is the place where that belongs. It does need to be envisioned in the future as a clustered mix of uses. Think of it more as multi-use, that whole area as a master planned community where you would have a variety of uses that are more walkable, that are tighter knit, that are closer together, as the preferred images from the community from the survey would indicate there. As we start to illustrate some of those opportunities, there's two significant development parcels, looking at a mix of uses, being able to fill in some of the surface parking lots that are out there today that really are significantly underutilized, but then also finding a way to build your open space, your trail network to really tie that area together in the future. And if we zoom out, then we'll look at one significant parcel along Georgia 400 and the types of vision and intensity that came from the public input process, as well as a piece of property over off of Deerfield, just south of where we are today, and the potential types of development and connectivity that can be fostered there, in line with the public survey that was part of this process. This is a simulation of the corner of Deerfield and Morris Road to show you what that could look like in the future. And then if we zoom out, hovering over Fry's Electronics on Highway 9, looking out over the area, you'll notice there's still plenty of green there. The idea here isn't to create midtown or perimeter or downtown. The idea here is to create a density that is appropriate for Milton and still maintains a lot of the open space and the character while putting those things that could be maximized in the community in this particular district moving forward so that it does not leak into other areas. The McGinnis Ferry transitional area, and I'll go through these others much more quickly, this is really an area that if the interchange at McGinnis Ferry and Georgia 400, remember we're talking about a 20-year plan, if that interchange comes to fruition, we would expect this area to see more attention from developers. What's really important is where we have single-family neighborhoods today, which are in the yellow, that we preserve and protect those neighborhoods by making sure that we have higher intensity development pushed over towards Georgia 400 and lower intensity development over where it could have impact on single-family neighborhoods. The local activity center is where most of your commercial retail is today. This really isn't expected to change, but as you all have already taken to heart, it's about really a set of design standards and architectural standards that make the area a little tighter, a little more unique, a higher sense of design. And so a lot of the things that are already in your Highway 9 design guidelines in terms of limiting setbacks, trying to limit parking between buildings and public streets, enhance the landscape buffers, really put some additional oomph into those are all the right things. Your Highway 9 design guidelines already call for streetscaping. One set, if we can lower the speed limit to 35 miles an hour, where we can get the landscaping closer to the road. Another set where speed limits are higher, where those pieces have to be pushed back behind the sidewalk. And you've already adopted your urban design and fencing standards as part of that tie into the package. The real reason to have all of those in there, you and the city of Milton are already doing a lot of those things, but we need it to continue all the way down to downtown Alpharetta so that it's one continuous, consistent Highway 9 design corridor from an architectural and landscape design standpoint. The transitional areas, again, are about really creating a buffer between your commercial and your residential. So these are lower intensity areas They focus on some of the properties along Highway 9. We're sort of picking on the intersection of Highway 9 and Cogburn, where we have a series of retail centers that are not doing particularly well from a financial standpoint. What are some of the opportunities as we're looking out? Very little's probably going to happen there 2, 3, 4 years, but as we look out a little bit longer and finances may be more available in the future, then there are opportunities to build the out parcels in an appropriate manner, which I know you all know plenty about and are having good discussions about. There may be some opportunities to replace some of the retail in that area that's not succeeding with some residential opportunities, but where residential is here, we're really talking about local residential. The opportunity is probably more senior housing. You've already seen a couple of assisted living facilities proposed for this section of Highway 9. I think most of those are in the city of Alpharetta, but that certainly is the trend, and you're likely to see that continue. And then you have some additional parcels on Highway 9 that have not yet developed, and incorporating these standards as quickly as possible so that you're ready for the next wave is important. So as you look at that overall area...
Can you go back one slide?
I can.
I just wanted to look at all those properties on the, what would be the north side that have all the parking to the rear, except for the one in the middle.
And the challenge is, as you've already observed this evening, well, I mean, part of your challenge obviously is a timing issue. The design challenge for these things is once you put a drive-through in, then you have to have the circular drive, and so that changes this particular design aesthetic that's shown in this drawing. So as we look at the overall picture of Highway 9, then the idea here is over the next 10, 15, 20 years, building the continuity along the street, maintaining and enhancing your landscape buffer, and then using all those different tools that you have, out parcel development, redevelopment, positioning things in the right location to really change the character of Highway 9. So it's not a suburban corridor where you're looking at parking lots, but a much more integrated, high-quality environment. And so if you look at Highway 9 today, then that's what we've got.
That's front, sure.
Alpharetta's road.
And then what it could look like in the future, excuse my subway, it's a little modern. I think for this area, the architectural style is really probably more in keeping with this graphic. Then if you're interested in Alpharetta, then this is the North Main Street end of Alpharetta. The parcels are particularly thin in that portion, so it's a little bit of a different strategy in terms of assembling properties, starting to combine some of those over the long term, but still the same characters and bringing buildings a little closer to the street, providing the landscape buffers and the sidewalks so that we can go from this to something more like this in the future. Last piece of this is priority projects. As we mentioned, the transportation is a key piece. Through this process and through public input, we've been able to prioritize the short-term transportation improvements. That includes 3 intersections, Bethany Bend at Highway 9, Bethany Bend at Morris Road, Westside Parkway, Windward, and Deerfield. That's 3 names, but 1 intersection. Multimodal improvements on Highway 9, Cogburn, and Bethany Bend. When we say multimodal, what we mean are traffic operations improvements. For the most part here, that is turn lanes at the intersections and appropriate signal timing, and then the pedestrian bicycle facilities that need to be there. One significant operational improvement is a project that the North Fulton CID is working on to widen the off-ramp from Georgia 400 northbound onto Windward Parkway, and then have a triple left at the bottom and adding a additional lane on Windward Parkway from Georgia 400 to Deerfield. So where today you have 3 short right turn lanes into the development, that would be 1 continuous lane to help get cars through the intersection at Georgia 400 and Windward and reduce the backups, particularly in the afternoon peak. The highest priority trail route is a connection along Webb Road from Cogburn to McGinnis Ferry, and then from McGinnis Ferry over to the Big Creek Greenway so that we can tie Milton residents into the facility that is the Big Creek Greenway. And from a transit standpoint, there's a short-term improvement to work with MARTA to redo some of the bus routes so that it better reaches your population that uses transit here, which is mostly seniors and employees. Right now, the bus routes are too focused on Windward Parkway and don't quite go north enough to capture some of the population that would really like to use it. And then in the longer term, we don't know what's going to happen with transit in the Atlanta region. MARTA right now is doing an alternatives analysis. GDOT is looking at managed lanes. Regardless of what it is, the regional activity center district needs to be tied into whatever, whenever, if ever, transit comes to this area so that, again, you can build off of that to take advantage of your biggest financial opportunity moving forward within the district.
Could you go back one, Eric? You didn't mention the access along 400.
Oh, the bike route,
Yeah.
the Green Line? Yes. The other project is actually all the way to Buckhead now. They are looking at a trail system that goes within the landscape buffer of Georgia 400. The city of Alpharetta has a grant and is working on that trail from Mansell to Haynesbridge Road. And so that project is leaving the opportunity. You're probably not going to find funding for that as your first project. It's probably a little farther off. But maintaining the opportunity to extend that bike trail all the way up to McGinnis Ferry so that it ties into the larger network as well. And so this is the list of those projects: the intersection improvements, the corridor improvements, the roadway operation, the bicycle pedestrian enhancements, including the connection to the Big Creek Greenway and the high-speed bike rail, and a couple of transit opportunities, short-term and long-term. There are also a couple of long-range or already underway or already funded transportation projects. I mentioned the GDOT study for the managed lane system. There is, of course, the potential interchange at McGinnis Ferry. MART is doing the alternatives analysis for transit. The realization of transit is probably quite a ways off, but we need to be at least cognizant of that as part of this plan. And then there are a number of projects that came forward from the public that are already funded or underway, including improvements at the intersection of Deerfield and Morris, improvements to the intersection of Cogburn and Bethany right out in front of Cambridge High School, new access points between Cogburn and State Route 9 at Cambridge High School. We're still learning ourselves whether that's right in, right out, or full capacity turn, but having that access is important. And then down in Alpharetta, improvements to the intersection of State Route 9.
Amen.
Do we have the principals buy-in for that at Cambridge? I know that there was a Milton, it was sort of a city idea that there should be some access to
You
that.
know, principals in terms of owner or the principal of the high school?
No, the principal is the principal of the high school. I heard him speak one time about how he was really opposed to that access, and it was like, yikes, that's a big part of the Milton transportation plan.
I have to rely a little bit on your transportation staff who's leading that up. The public comment that we've heard through this process is to the extent that there could be additional ingress and egress points, the public sees that as a positive in order to disperse the traffic.
Yeah, and that's my point, is the public is very outspoken about the value of it, and I have heard the principal speak in opposition to it, so he intends to have that closed.
Folks were very interested through this process in having that additional access. The last piece of the plan are a series of strategies, zoning recommendations, design recommendations. There are narratives on the commercial strategy for attracting the right type of development, particularly for the regional activity center in the future. Lifelong community strategies, which is about the residential opportunities, particularly for seniors that already live in your area that would like to stay here, but maybe don't want several thousand square feet on large acreages, might be looking for a lower maintenance lifestyle, but would love to stay here in Milton. And then open space strategies, knowing that we don't have millions of dollars to go out and buy green space. That needs to be incorporated into our development codes so that we take advantage of private opportunities to preserve and enhance open space, and not just have it as wooded areas, but turn it into a community amenity over time. So all of that is detailed in the plan as well. And with that, I will stop and be happy to answer any questions, and also we'll probably get Dennis Mattson to help me if there are questions for the document itself.
I'll start. Having been through your presentation a number of times, I think your presentation is much better than the document.
Absolutely.
The action plans and the recommendations to me come across as a little weak.
Okay.
Weak in the sense of being more general and vague and not as specific. Now, I mean, the specific transportation improvements are enumerated, although there's no costs in there, right? At least in the table that's in here.
Yeah, they are today. They weren't there Friday.
Okay. So, I mean, one of my questions is, and I know there's no guarantees here, but is the prioritization and the way these have been sequenced based on your experience in terms of what we might expect in terms of funding, or is it prioritized on some other basis?
It's prioritized on 3 bases. One is how likely are these projects to be implementable in the short term? Can we find funding and can we get them done within a 3 to 7 year period?
Okay.
The second piece is our experience from where we can find the funding sources and which funding sources you're able to tap into more quickly. The third component is public input. At the last public workshop, we did a prioritization exercise with the public.
Right.
And so their value judgment on those projects is
But it's in
based-
that order?
No, they're all fairly equal.
Okay.
It's a 3-legged stool.
Okay.
One of the things I'd like to see is a little bit more detail on those transitional areas as to what kind of recommendations that go into that. Particularly along that Highway 9 at the upper end towards Bethany Bend.
Yeah, and the biggest challenge up towards Bethany Bend is, even looking out 15 to 20 years, less of that area is
Yeah.
as susceptible to change as the south end.
Right.
But that said, I hear what you're saying, that we can tighten that up a little bit.
Okay.
Eric, I guess when I said weak, the part that to me is not as strong is the non-financial stuff in here, right? I mean, the financial stuff, the transportation improvements are pretty specific and they'll have costs with them. TDRs and form-based code, I mean, just the discussion we had before about these properties along Highway 9, unless we go to the extent of putting form-based code in place up here, we're going to be dealing with the same issue as having just a set of guidelines. It doesn't really help us at all. That's the area that to me needs to be strengthened in here as part of the short-term plan, is getting that work done.
Okay.
Are the design guidelines or standards that are going to go in here just what's already there stuck in the book, or is there something different?
No, it's expanded. What we've done, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, what we've done is we've taken the Highway 9 design guidelines that you already have, also the Deerfield overlay and design guidelines. We've added a little bit of detail to that, so it is a little bit longer in the document now. Well, actually, it may not even be in the document that you're looking at, so it's definitely longer than that. Yeah, it's several pages long now, but it is very heavily concentrated on the site design standards. Your existing guidelines have a pretty okay feel for the landscape and some of the architectural, although we've beefed that up a little bit. Most of ours most of what we've added relate to the site design about setbacks and parking places and many of the issues you've talked about tonight.
When do you, from your perspective, feel like you will have a complete draft document ready for review? No more additions, et cetera?
End of this week at the latest. We're working on one weekend this week.
Okay.
And that was the last week.
Admittedly, it was a very tight time frame from the last public workshop to the content to getting it all in the document. And
Yeah, the only reason we're asking, we talked beforehand about trying to meet the April 23rd deadline. We're just trying to figure out how to do that. So.
understand.
Yeah,
Go ahead, Fred.
with the benefit of those things being part
Oh,
of it.
yeah.
George, I've got a lot, as I've gone through part of it, not all of it, that they're just minor things. And I think it's a waste of time to sit here with everyone to,
Yeah.
Like Marta's, some of the places that are available in the report says that they're not. So it's those kind of minimal corrections type thing, like Cogburn Road. I think it says no MARTA bus station or bus stops, yet you show 3 or 4 on the map. So it's those kind of things that I don't think we need to be, sitting here all night.
Well, we can call you tomorrow. Either Michelle or myself will call you tomorrow. Get your comments, pass them back to the
Okay.
consultant, and he can put it in all by Friday.
Okay.
How's that sound?
We would love to do that.
Is that okay?
I would like to ask, selfishly on Bond Road, since I lived there off of it, what was the funding, you say it's coming, was that for the traffic signal?
It is unfortunately not for the traffic signal. We are leaving that project in our action plan. The city of Alpharetta has done a warrant study a
Yes.
couple of years ago to
Yes.
see if it would warrant the traffic signal. My understanding is GDOT would not approve the traffic
That's
signal
correct.
based on the warrant study.
That's correct.
GDOT has agreed to help the city of Alpharetta fund getting a left turn lane, a dedicated left turn lane.
And a
So for
coffee
those
shop.
folks that are going to turn left, they can get out of the
Right.
travel lane in order to do so. That will be an interim step, and then the city will be able to go back as things change or as time passes over the next couple of years and do the warrant study again. And then if the warrant shows it, they'll also have a plan that
Right.
backs up the opportunity to be able to signalize, and that hopefully will make a stronger case in the future.
Because all those new senior homes are going there on Bond Road, so.
They absolutely are. And you're right, the sight distance, because you're, particularly when you're coming northbound, because you're uphill and around a curve, is very difficult.
Can I follow up on Fred's request? Kathy, can we get a Word, is this done in Word or is it?
It's not, it's in InDesign.
Yeah.
So
Can
we can
get
make
it?
PDFs really easily, but
Yeah, PDFs aren't editable though, that's, yeah, okay. I'm not worried about track changes for me, it's just that, like Fred, I mean, I've got a number of comments that having a phone conversation about's probably not gonna be as productive as me being able to just mark it up and send it to you. But I'll do it however you want.
I could just type them up.
Whatever works
Bring them
best.
over or something. I mean, it's not that. Okay.
I mean, you and I've talked about this before. One of the things I'd like to see gotten out of here is references to character areas.
right, it should be districts and sub-areas.
Right, and so all those references to character areas I want to try and get out. So having said that, that's one of the kinds of things that I would be trying to redline out of here.
Yeah, that we've taken care of that.
Okay,
Do you just want to pause? Or you just want to?
sure, I can do that.
Well,
do that.
for instance, on page 68, you call, under the concept plan, you call it a proposed senior center. And I don't know if you mean a senior center like Alpharetta Senior Center, or do you mean a home housing for seniors?
Yes, it should be
But
senior
when you say
residence.
senior center, I related that back to,
Yeah, it should be senior residence.
okay, that's the type of thing. Okay,
Okay, well, those are easily captured.
fine.
Yep.
Okay.
And we'll take your, if you put the time in to read it, we will take your comments in whatever form that's easy
Well, I'm
for
a
you.
little short. I'm only a few pages in.
I understand.
And I've been to the presentation, so.
Okay. Paul, questions?
Nope, I'm good.
Kurt?
Fine.
Okay, thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you all for your time.
Thanks for
Very
your
good.
work.
Yeah, nice job.
Excellent.
We need to have a motion to adjourn for 5 minutes. We're going to all take a bite break.
Yeah.
I apologize, I couldn't wait any longer.
So moved.
Yeah, that's
So
it.
moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, 5 minutes.
Well, one of the things, one of the things in there we need more parks. We need more ball parks. You know, more places to play soccer and all that. Then you read and you hear by night, there's only going to be 37% of the population that have children.
Well,
So,
the other thing is, Eric's right, based on the
Well,
March 13th's already gone.
Of next year.
Oh.
Yeah.
Why would?
Yeah.
Just purchases after that.
After
Oh,
that.
okay. Okay.
After 13.
I got you.
So if you want a new car, do it before then.
I got you.
Let's talk about some of those transportation.
That is, when that hits, people are going to scream.
Oh,
I think it's
yeah.
22 miles to work. Right now, they're probably going through.
Okay, are we back on?
Yeah, we're on.
Okay, we were talking about the historic preservation ordinance, and I think we've gotten to, I don't know, maybe 2 or 3. I'm gonna recommend that we try and point out those things. Let's set some context here. To Kathleen's point, whether we like it or not, the city has chosen to be subservient to this ordinance that the state has, and not to use the discretion to create something better. So let's try to make the best of that, I think, by us understanding that's what's going to happen, and point out those things where we feel like there's some material change that would benefit the city if we make the change. I mean, I think we talked about one by changing the definition of an historic district. Are there others of similar nature as we go through here?
I just go page by page, George?
Yeah, so we were on page 2, I believe. Is there anything else on page 2 that's material that we would recommend be changed?
So we've captured two things on page 2.
Right.
Feeling and association, and then adding a number 4 to
Correct.
historic district.
Correct.
Okay.
Hearing none. Any changes on page 3?
Yeah, well, about the individuals that were outside, what did we say about that?
Say again?
The professionals or whatever, did we just say that was okay?
Well, this is one of those examples where, we're selectively choosing not to follow the ordinance. I mean, the ordinance says that a majority of the members shall have demonstrated special interest experience or education, and all members, blah, blah, blah. So, but we've said to the extent they're available and willing to serve, and then we don't even have a majority because there's 7 members. Why are we electing not to adopt the same language here by saying that at least 4 of the members shall?
Not enough people to draw from, I guess, is the issue.
And I'm okay with that. I guess, again, my point is, we're picking and choosing where we're going to comply with the ordinance, with the state, not ordinance, but the state act.
Well, and this yellow is the state language, so it was compromising the state to try and keep it in, but again, it's availability.
Okay.
Well, I respectfully disagree, Kevin. The only thing that the state did was make individual plural, because the language was there before, according to what Angela handed out before the meeting.
I think that the red is what the attorney did.
Well, I'm looking at the document that Angela handed out, and the only comment that the state made on that section was to make the word individual individuals. It said to the extent and individuals available willing to serve, and they changed it to the extent individuals. So the red, unless I'm misinterpreting it, the red is coming from the state, not the yellow.
No, the red's supposed to be from Ken, right?
I understand that,
I
but
mean,
look at this.
No, I said, yeah.
Representing this, no, I mean, if it has a yellow, that's initiated by the state. Now, Ken could have tweaked it a little bit.
That's what I'm saying,
but I
then he
mean-
did something to that. Inside.
Robin, I don't know whether you were there when Angela handed this out, but the document that she handed us, when you look at that section, the only thing that the state did was say that individuals should be plural.
Actually, the state changed it from 1 to 3, and then I think
Where did they change it from 1 to 3?
She handed it out.
there's a different copy that is
earlier.
not shown.
Yeah.
Yeah, the actual one that was handed out.
No, I know that, but it's not in here.
Because it's already been changed. I'm sorry, there is actually another set with just purely, it's.
Another set from the
of
state?
comments. No, it's the original state comments. We gave you one that already incorporated the state and then with the attorney's writings. So that was our mistake of giving you the wrong set. But in her, you can answer.
Right, yeah, like Robin said, I just gave you the wrong write-up, because we've got so many, so I apologize. The state struck 1 and had us add 3, and then the attorney did the rest of the piece.
Well, I guess we're saying we don't need to change it. Is that what we're saying? Anything else on page 3? Page 4?
Under number 5, we said to do like it said in 4, recommend to the Milton City Council instead of restore or preserve.
Right.
Cool. Okay.
You all right with
Recommend.
that one, Robin?
Yeah, recommend.
Recommend the restoration or preservation.
How about recommend
Recommend to the Milton City Council
Just be consistent with what's above it.
the restoration or preservation of any historic properties acquired by the city of Milton.
Okay.
That's all I had. How would they be able to acquire any if we don't designate any once it's a district?
It's a good question.
Okay.
Well, actually, we're in that situation right now, correct? I'm sorry, what? That, restore or preserve any historic properties acquired by the city of Milton, subject to funding availability and with the
How do
prior
you know,
approval of the.
how do you know it's an historic property, Robin?
Well, what? I mean, we're out there,
The Hopewell House, we actually had a review done by the state of it, the 106 environmental review. They came back and said that it is eligible for National Register nomination.
But to Mark's point, it is not a historic property as defined in this ordinance, because it has not been through the process of designating it as an historic property.
That is right.
So his point is, how can we acquire an historic property?
Once this ordinance gets passed, then those can be designated.
I mean, it doesn't say when it has to be acquired.
But it has to be designated before it's acquired, right?
It could be eligible, no, not necessarily, no. It could be determined to be eligible for nomination.
So we want to say restore, preserve any properties that have been designated eligible for historic properties? Thank you, Bob. It's going to work the way people want it to work. 14, we talked about before. Do we want to leave that the way it is, or do we want to change it?
14.
Yeah, I still, my point was that they should receive grants and so on behalf of the city or
Yeah.
something, but should not have the right to receive, the commission should not be receiving donations, grants, funds. Was
I agree.
my
Yeah.
belief.
Yeah,
I
on
agree.
behalf of.
Okay.
Where does that go? On behalf, or gifts on behalf.
Gifts of historic property on behalf of the city.
Receive donations, grants, funds, or gifts of historic property on behalf of the city. And recommend the acquisition or sale of historic properties. There's a much more active role being defined for them here than I think any of us wanted them to have, right?
Ever contemplated.
Right.
Did you get that, Robin?
So receive donations, grants, funds,
Or
or
gifts.
gifts of historic property on behalf of the city
Right.
and,
Recommend the acquisition or sale of historic properties to the city council.
yeah.
And George, the same issue is with number 8 and number 12. Number 8, where they're gonna make studies, which means they're gonna have to spend money.
Right.
Number 12, performing historic preservation activities, which is gonna involve money.
Yeah, we want to put them in the form of recommending that those things be done.
Probably 13 too then.
Yeah,
Should we just-
recommend.
Can we just say shall recommend such investigations and studies on number 8?
Well, with number 8, it says, as the Milton City Council or the HPC itself may deem from time to time necessary. So I would take out or the PC
Or
itself.
HPC, yeah.
So it would be shall recommend such investigations, blah, 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 and then
Yep.
delete or the HPC itself.
Right.
Yep.
Okay, and then the 12, should be recommend that,
Recommend historic preservation activities be performed. mean, I don't even know what 12 means, to be honest with you.
I don't either.
Recommend to the mayor and council.
I'm not sure what you gain or lose by just taking 12 out altogether.
Well, they want to be designated as the official agency.
Mhm.
That's why
Well,
they're,
then
that's
just,
why
well,
that's in
then just leave that and just say, designate the HPC as the official agency of the Milton Historic Preservation Program.
That's good.
there. Wow, or strike it entirely.
What do you want to do?
Yeah, designate the HPC as the official agency of the Milton Historic Preservation Program.
And then F on the next page has to change, that's the same thing, it needs to say on behalf of authority to accept donations on behalf of Milton City Council.
Correct. Mhm.
Anything on page 5, anything else?
Nope.
Page 6?
Wait a minute.
Oh,
Sorry.
Where did you just do F on
Yes.
5?
Yes.
yeah.
And you referred back to 14?
No, just said that it has to be, they're give the authority to accept on behalf of the city council.
Okay.
What about 13? You had someone that said 13 needed to be changed on page 4.
Yeah, I think Robin changed that. Recommend retaining persons with professional expertise.
I changed 12.
I'm sorry, 13 should say recommend. Recommend retaining persons.
And then on 5. Never mind. I was looking at subpoint 2 below A. It looks like it's. I mean, I don't understand the difference between may and shall there. If it's may, it means that it's their choice. Shall means that they need to. So
I don't know why it was changed.
Well, they don't, I mean, they don't have to, they may choose not to make a recommendation, so.
Recommend districts.
But if you're making
And that's
presentations.
from the attorney, that he wanted to clarify.
Yeah, I don't get that. I mean,
Yeah, I don't
if
either.
it's gonna be something brought forward, their only choice is to recommend it to the mayor, the Milton City Council.
Well, they can choose not to go forward. They don't have to make a recommendation.
I see
I
what
think
the attorney
that's
was
covered
thinking.
elsewhere.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah,
all right.
yeah, because this is under the heading of preliminary research.
Okay.
B.
Page 6,
B.
B1. I'd recommend keeping the header that says criteria for selection of historic districts and take out everything but the last sentence. Only because it's repeated, it's the same
Oh, good
wording.
point.
Yeah, we said remove, so.
I'm in for that, because it's repeated.
So that paragraph, everything except the last sentence.
Except for the last sentence.
Well, you start out criteria for selection of historic
Yeah.
districts.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Page 7.
I think that's a good request.
Page 8. Robin, it's a nit, but in 2A, the word described doesn't need an S on it.
Right,
Gosh, I wrote something on page 8. I can't tell what I wrote.
We talked about having the right to reapply
Yeah, that's it.
in
Maybe,
6.
yeah. On how they, instead of appeal, how they reapply.
Right.
Yeah, I'd like to add that one. We'll ask the attorney about that one.
Okay.
Page 9.
Good.
That's my favorite section.
Go.
I'm all for a grandfather clause. It says, if you're there first, you don't have to comply until such time the property's sold. For non-contributing.
Could they just ask the attorney how you could put in there something about grandfathering?
Yeah.
I mean, isn't that the same thing? You're forcing them
Mhm.
without representation.
So you can say that into the record. George, Fred would like to make
No,
a
you don't.
political statement.
I don't hear what he said.
No.
He's likening it to what the Supreme Court is going through.
Oh.
Well, they did determine that even though it is a tax, it is my tax.
Oh, good. Great government work. Hey, wait, you were part of the government.
Well, what do we do here?
I was the rebel.
Oh,
Anything?
You fit in well here.
I used to figure out how to get.
Can we,
I don't know what,
is this something we could ask Ken, is there a way to put in there something that would, I'll just have the simple word, grandfather? I mean, I don't know how else,
Specific to the non-conforming.
non-conforming. Is there a way?
Until such
I mean-
time that the property is sold. They're not subject to.
Non-contributing. Yeah.
Non-contributing.
Yeah, I got started on that conforming.
Kathy, can we go back to what you said before? And I just want to try and test something. I mean, I understand your point, but I want to make sure your point is that if it's a non-contributing building, structure, whatever, that the reason that the ordinance needs to capture that is because of the potential for it undermining or negatively impacting the historic properties that are in the district. So would it be appropriate to define material change more with that kind of terminology so that the yardstick for deciding whether it's material is whether or not it would negatively impact the surrounding historic properties or something?
I think, isn't there somewhere in here that does define what exactly is to be reviewed and not to be reviewed? Because you can't get a building permit without the certificate of appropriateness.
Yeah, but you gotta have a certificate of appropriateness, whether you have a building permit. There's 5 criteria that are listed for material change in the definition, but unfortunately it says, a change that will affect any of these things, such as, which means that it can be something that's not here. And as an example, one of the things that's listed in the definition is a landscape feature. And when I read those 5 things below there, landscaping, unless you're going to excavate, doesn't, landscape feature looks like it's walls, fences, steps, pavements. It wouldn't, if I want to move bushes or plant bushes, that doesn't fit into those 5, and yet, to me, landscape features could be construed that way.
When you get to G, the next page, it does talk about the grounds for approval.
G on the next page, where are you? Sorry.
Page 10.
Page 10.
Page 10. G, grounds for approval. It talks about what the criteria are for reconstruction, for relocation, for demolition.
Yeah, but George, let me go back to the point that I was making before.
Yeah.
Regardless of what you did, what you may do with that, you're still subjecting a non-contributing homeowner to a process to even get the certificate of appropriateness. That, in my mind, if they were there first, they shouldn't have to go through that process at all until the property changes hands. I'm sorry, Chris?
I mean, is it still, do you have to get that for a non-material change?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's not even in the grounds for approval.
Maybe we need to define what a non-material item is.
I thought it did, it's less than 25%.
Yeah, but that.
But even the non-material change is still subjected to a certificate of appropriateness.
Mm-hmm.
That's my beef.
I agree.
But the grounds for approval, as you stated, says that it finds that the proposed material change in the appearance.
Right.
So they shouldn't even be listening to non-material changes for
anything.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And yet they still have to go to get a certificate of appropriateness.
Well, we've agreed that we're gonna talk to the attorney to see if we can come up with something. Frankly, I don't think there is, but we're happy to do that.
Okay, that'd be great. I mean,
Well,
just to
but-
entertain it,
but-
see what he has to say.
Well, there's 2 questions. One's the grandfathering, but you guys make a good point. Why can't we exempt a non-contributing
non-material.
Yeah, a
change from
non-contributing
a certificate
property
of
from having to
appropriateness.
get a certificate of appropriateness
For a
when the change
non-material
is
change.
non-material.
None of the last draft, isn't that what came back?
That'd do it.
That might be the fix.
That would fix it.
Well, it's.
For my-
That fixes it for us.
Yeah.
Right.
It doesn't fix it for staff or for the other measuring bodies, but it fixes it in my
But,
mind.
well, yeah, that's just it. I mean, there's no section for grounds for approval of a non-material change. So, I mean.
Well, it's
what-
automatic.
Well, exactly. I mean, that's,
But-
that, the
but you
assumption
gotta-
based off here is that it's just a rubber stamp and
Yeah,
then just.
but
move
you
forward.
gotta go
Yeah.
through the process, which
Yeah.
means you gotta submit drawings and specs and everything else,
And because there's no grounds, to Chris's point, you're still subject to the whim of the
Yeah,
board
it's
that you're in front of,
subjective,
and they
yeah.
can say no without a definitive list of criteria to measure it by.
yeah.
You want to put in, cherry trees, and they say, gee, no, we want apple trees, you don't get to win.
Yep.
And there has been histories of these historical
Can
societies
we ask
being
Ken this
arbitrary and capricious.
too?
Yeah.
We can check both of those.
Yeah, I have it written down for
I hate to bring it up, but we'll have to have a whole section attached to this for penalties. And then we'll have to go back to the matrix and add it to that.
Yeah.
Not even through the matrix yet.
No?
Okay, thank you.
Okay, where are we? We're on page 11?
We're on page 10, right?
Yeah.
Was there anything else on page 10? Sorry.
No, I originally was questioning the moving. I guess I'm gonna roll around that.
You just appreciate the cost to the city of doing this, right? Because every certificate of appropriateness is going to require publication and public hearing. So every time somebody wants to change their door in an historic district, it's going to require public hearing.
Yeah, but don't worry, because there's no criteria for the measurement, so.
Okay. Anything on page 11?
Yes, undue hardship.
Yes.
And the fact that it's, the
I
authority
would-
resides entirely with
I think it ought to
HPC.
go back to the way it was.
Yes.
Yeah. I agree.
They shall have the power to recommend to the mayor and city council. In two places in that paragraph.
And
And if it's
not to
if it's
confuse
not that,
them.
I'd like the attorney to explain.
I was going to
why
say,
the-
yeah, this is attorney. Yeah, this is Ken's change.
Anything else on page 11?
Nope.
Page 12.
No.
I believe in J or K2,
K2.
we had to take
Two.
HPC out of there
Right.
and put back in of its own initiative or at the request of the
Yeah.
HPC.
Just back to the original.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, which one is that?
Item 2
K2.
under J, I think, on yours.
Well, she's got, everybody, we got the same set, so now she's, so.
That's
the
right.
new K2, right?
Yes.
Right.
Back to the original.
Yeah.
Right.
Doesn't matter.
I have
So,
a,
the appeals section, is this not,
This,
wasn't there a question about appeals earlier?
no, the question on the appeal was the appeal of a designation of a property as being historic or not.
Okay.
But I do have a question on that appeal section in O. Is 15 days adequate?
That's what the state had said, so.
There's a total of 60 days in total, within 15 days of the expiration of the 45-day period allowed for the commission action.
Say it again, Carol.
It says, in case of a failure of the commission to act within 15 days of the expiration of the 45-day period allowed for the commission action.
Yeah, in that case, you get 60 days, but if they turn down your application for a certificate of appropriateness, you get 15 days to appeal it.
Should have at least the same time period as the commission has to reject it.
Yeah.
just the state, right?
Yeah. We can ask them about that, just double check, because what I'm reading here says, I don't know what this is.
But your intent is you'd like more time for appeal?
Yes.
All right, we can ask.
State's comment says same as appeals from a
Right, I was just starting to look at that.
something for municipal ordinance violation. But that's only with respect to going to Superior Court.
Right.
It's not the time frame. I don't see anything in the state's comments about the time frame. But I might be looking at the wrong document. I agree with Joe, that would be,
So we'll check on that.
okay, anything on 13?
On the states, penalty set forth in Chapter 12 of the Code of Ordinances of the city for non-zoning violations. 62, 57.
Anything on 14?
I think Fred's still working on something.
I'm working on one on 14.
13,
No.
you okay with that?
Yeah, 13 is fine. 14 was the penalties that I asked about earlier. Penalties set forth for the, in Chapter 12, Section 1 through 5 of the Code of Ordinances of the city for non-zoning violations. Ooh.
Well, we do, there are some things in the matrix.
Yeah, no, okay, but
Well, that's section one
that's,
of the.
that's what they're gonna,
city code.
okay, so it'd be the matrix that we're gonna look at next.
I'm not saying that's included in there, but we can add it.
Okay, no, but I meant that was where it would
That's
be.
what- Yeah, we
Here,
can
maintenance
take it
of
from that
historic
section of, from.
There is
It's
one,
in there.
it's just maintenance of historic properties, but.
But it is in,
But,
I didn't get that, I'm sorry.
The very last one on the matrix.
It's in there.
So,
I didn't have it.
having gone through all that, we've got a couple of questions for the city attorney. What do we want to do with respect to taking this forward? When is this, when are they expecting to have this in front of them, at the April 23rd meeting?
Yes.
So could we get a revision and put that on the agenda for the workshop when we talk about the LCI?
If that's a meeting where we can vote.
And they're also gonna have a work session,
Well, we have to make a special call meeting, I
Yeah.
think.
so the city council will have a work session on the 16th.
16th.
So you would want to have whatever changes done prior to that, so we could present it.
Could we get on the agenda for that 16th and with the revision in front of them and at the work session and just have a discussion about it?
I think you could come as.
I mean, that would be a way to do it. Yeah, but work sessions, they don't generally want public comment.
You're looking for a joint work session, or?
Well, I'm just trying to think of the most expeditious way to get to the finish line here.
Yeah, but you need a vote, so you need to call a special meeting.
Yeah, why don't we just make our meeting, if it can be the week of the 9th,
Okay,
make it a special call meeting, then we have voting,
all right.
you have voting.
Well, then, yeah, that way it'll be on the 16th, it'll be our voted on. Okay,
Right.
all right. So we need a motion to that effect.
Well, we probably need to establish the special call meeting date first, so we can actually reference it in the motion.
All right, let's talk about timing for a special call meeting. I think we've only got the two things we want to talk about. We said the week of the 9th, right?
Well, I was making that request just because I'm gone the week, it has to be done before the 16th.
Well, I don't
anyway.
think, as a practical matter, I don't think we can expect it to be everything in hand until then, right?
Right, from the LCI.
Are there nights that week that are not available, Robin, for us to do that?
So the 10th is the design review board. So that's a Tuesday. Unless you, I guess we could always meet in the executive conference room, but you would probably really need to be here too, though we can't be in two places at once.
What time is your meeting?
They're usually done by 7, actually.
Well, we have to do the LCI anyway, so we'll start with that.
Okay, so the 10th?
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 10th at 6?
Well, okay.
Is that all right?
And you want to do it in the executive conference room? Or when are we going to start the meeting hours?
Well, she starts her meeting at 6. I was thinking you'd start at 7.
Okay.
She could be there, or you could do it at 6:30, and we still have plenty of time to do the LCI. Yeah, earliest would be 6:30,
Let's do 6:30 then.
Okay.
and that would be in the executive conference room.
Okay,
This is preemptive.
all right.
And it will be advertised as a special call.
meeting, yeah. Okay,
Let's see.
so.
I mean, it'll be advertised, yes, and I can put it in the paper for publishing next week, so that'll be fine. When you defer something, you don't have to re-advertise it, so that's, okay, but just to get the meeting out is fine. And I'll go ahead and, there won't be any, I'm advertising it, but there's no rules to it when you defer it. Because this is a text amendment, and you're deferring it just to this next
We
meeting,
do.
so we're okay.
Are we deferred?
Well,
We're not voting on it.
Yeah, okay.
So we just-
We
Yeah.
do need a motion now to move it to the meeting on the 10th.
Yeah, and we really defer, we're deferring.
Right.
Okay. I move we move RZ 12-03, the text amendment to Article 18 of Chapter 64 of the City Code Historic Preservation Commission to the meeting of April 10th.
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. So we'll be looking forward to a revised amendment based on our conversation and the changes we proposed and answers from Ken.
okay, can
From
I just make
staff?
clarification?
Sure.
I'm gonna be on vacation all that week before, you for two. I mean, we can have it for the meeting, I don't think we can get it to you other than maybe the day before.
That's fine.
That's fine.
I just
That's
wanna
fine.
let you know it's not
No,
gonna
that-
come,
that's
you know,
fine.
even the week before.
The more important thing is getting the questions to Ken.
Okay.
I think, so that we've got answers back.
The others, we just.
Okay. We've covered the 3 items that were probably the primary. There's no timeline driving the enforcement matrix, so I'd like to ask if what's on the agenda for the April meeting at this point, Robert?
Form-based code and TDO.
Only that?
And maybe so knows what else.
Is that all right now, though?
Yeah, because I'll have a zoning mod, so there won't be any new items.
Fifth, third.
No rezoning items.
Did you say Fifth Third would come before us or not?
No.
Okay, I thought you said, okay.
I would just like to suggest that, given the hour, that we defer these 2 to that meeting, because like I said, I don't think there's any time pressure on either one of these.
I'll move for that motion.
Made the motion?
Made and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. One thing I,
Adjourn
Yes.
now.
yeah, well, I got one thing before we adjourn. I just want to get your guys' opinion on something. One of the items that is being discussed by the Charter Commission right now is a modification to the procedure for reviewing and approving ordinances. And the question at hand, the charter does not require there to be 2 readings of an ordinance or 2 presentations of the ordinance. As you guys all know right now, the practice right now is that there's a first reading, which is not a reading per se. It's just an announcement in the agenda that there's an ordinance being considered, and there's no opportunity for public comment. So the question is, do we need 2 readings, number one, the way it's set up right now, instead of just 1, or do we need 2 readings where each of them offers the public an opportunity to comment, so that if you aren't able to make one, you have the you have 2 bites of the apple, so to speak?
Also gives the community an opportunity for some input to mayor and council to consider before just the first night that it's heard in its entirety.
Right.
So if there's valuable information to be considered from the community, it will give the mayor and council a chance to think about it for.
Well, that's my question to you guys. I mean, we've been through enough of these. What's your point of view on which way to go? I mean, right now, the first reading is kind of a non.
So is the question to expand the first reading, or is the question to knock out the first reading?
Well, there's several questions that are being asked. I mean, as an example, Alpharetta has a first reading, right? The poor city attorney has to literally read everything that's being proposed.
Right.
It takes forever. That's not what's being proposed. The question, call it presentation instead of reading. The question is, right now, there's 2 presentations being made. The charter does not require 2 presentations. The only requirement of the charter is that it can't be approved on the same day that it's presented for the first time. It's the only requirement. So we're not trying to change that. The question is, should we recommend that the charter be amended to say that there are 2 readings required, 2 presentations required, both with public comment opportunity before an ordinance can be approved in its final form?
Yes.
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 Okay, that's what I wanted to hear.
And what's the driver behind that? To give the public more opportunity for input? Is that the driver? And I like that if that's what's behind
Well,
it.
to be honest with you,
Or put it more under the scrutiny of anybody.
why don't we adjourn? But we need a motion.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. We're off the record.
Turn off the.
Okay, just give me a second.
No, I wasn't going to say anything that can't be recorded. I just wanted, there's no reason to.
I can always cut it off.
The request came from